Okay, Islamic finance has become a very trending issue in last decade and also in the very beginning of the current decade. And there has been a number of reasons for this trending topic, I mean the Islamic finance. So though this has been trending for last decade and also the current decade, or also you can mention the last couple of decades, but the thing is that the history of Islamic finance is not from the 30 years back or from 40 years back. The basic principles or the basic foundations of Islamic finance, this history is more than 1500 years old. Though it has been trending in recent decades, but its foundation was built more than 1500 years ago. So in terms of its history, it's not a new trend, it's not a new area to explore. It's a very old area in terms of its foundation, in terms of its history. But in terms of its
Sir, sorry to interrupt
recognition.
you.
Yeah.
Sir, have you started sharing the slides?
No.
Okay, sir.
Now I have started sharing our screen, my screen. Okay. Now I can see your slide. You can see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I was referring that the history of Islamic finance is more than 1500 years old, but it has been trending for couple of decades, last couple of decades, because of recognition by financial industry that how essential it is and how can we practice the ethical finance and how can we practice the responsible finance and sustainable finance. You probably have learned these buzzwords in recent years, sustainable finance, then equitable finance, then responsible finance. You probably have come to learn about this. So for these buzzwords and these issues, Islamic finance has become trending. And this Islamic finance, though the religion Islam has been, the religion Islam is the foundation of this Islamic finance, but keep it in your mind that Islamic finance is not for the Muslims. Islamic finance is open. Islamic finance is available for people from any religion. So there is no restriction. There is no banning on any people, any person, irrespective of his or her age or gender or country or his or her religion. So whatever his or her background is, Islamic finance is open for all. So anyone tries to practice or anyone tries to engage in Islamic finance, there is no restriction on that. It is open for all. So though the foundation is on the Islam or the religion Islam, there is no ground or there is no binding. There is no religious binding on any person that if you follow the Islamic finance, you have to follow the religion Islam. There is no binding like this. Okay, so it is open for all religions. That is the first understanding. So, but in our country or in other countries, there is a misconception that Islamic finance is probably for the Muslims. Islamic finance is not for the Jews, or Islamic finance is not for the Christians or for Hindus or Buddhists, or Islamic finance is not for atheists, whatever it is. Okay. So this is the, we have to make our first misconception clear. And also the thing is that Islamic finance is not something which is based on Middle East, or which is based on the Gulf countries. So Islamic finance is not based on some countries. Islamic finance is not based on some geographical locations. Islamic finance is based on some religious principle. I mean, the religion Islam. So anyone from any part of the world can start practicing Islamic finance if he or she knows the Islamic finance principles. So though Islamic finance has become very popular in the Middle East region, and also for the oil industry and Islamic finance connection with the oil industry, it is not a finance which is on, or which is limited within the Gulf countries or the Middle East countries or within the Muslim countries. So these are some issues which we need to keep in our mind. And I have mentioned that Islamic finance has been trending in last couple of decades. So your follow-up question is how you are claiming it. Do you have any numbers? So before jumping to numbers, let me show some statistics with you. According to the Islamic Financial Services Board report, they reported that the industry of Islamic finance, the size of the Islamic finance industry has reached to 2.44 trillion USD as of the second quarter 2019. So I explored the very recent quarterly report, but I failed to find out the very recent quarterly update. So we have update, or I have update up to 2019 second quarter. The industry size for Islamic finance was reported 2.44 trillion USD. So in addition to that, out of the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, a major chunk of sovereign wealth fund are captured by the Islamic finance industry. And out of this 2.44 trillion Islamic finance industry, major chunk of the industry has been contributed by the Islamic banks, which is 1.7 trillion. You can say that it is more than 60%, at least more than 60%. And if we try to look at the Islamic capital market in terms of market capitalization of the Islamic capital market, the global market size of the Islamic capital market is worth of 645.7 billion. And if we turn to the insurance part of the Islamic finance industry, that is the Takaful, we can see that the industry size, I mean in insurance by the Islamic finance group in their total insurance market, 27.07 USD billion is contributed by Takaful insurance. So these are big numbers. If you compare, we will see some comparison later in a graph. So some follow-up numbers for the recent update that has been taken from the S&P Global Ratings report, and and you are familiar with the S&P rating agency, and they have mentioned that though Islamic finance industry was growing at a double-digit rate in last few years, but in 2020, 2021, the growth has reduced to single digit, though it grew at a very high rate due to the flotation of the Sukuk bond in many countries and increasing of the size of the Islamic finance industry by the issuance of the Sukuk in several countries. So it is expected that in this year, 2020-2021, the Islamic finance industry growth rate will be in a single growth rate. So you can estimate, say, for example, we are estimating that 9%, just for a rough number. So you can estimate that what is the current size of the Islamic finance industry. So what can you do? You can say 1 plus 9%. 1 plus 0.09, then USD trillion. So this is the approximate latest figure of the Islamic industry size. So at the same time, you can calculate what is about the Islamic banking, and what is about the Islamic capital market, and what is about the takaful insurance. Okay. So what is the reason that Islamic finance growth rate reduced to a single growth rate in this year? So the big reason is the attack from the COVID-19 pandemic. So though it has been attacked for the Islamic finance industry, and also it has been attacked for other industries also, but COVID-19 has created an awareness among us that what we are doing in terms of financial industry, probably we are not doing the things in a right way. So we are realizing that we need to operate our financial industry in a more responsible way, in a more sustainable way, and we will have to play in a way that we can have a significant role in changing the society. And also at the same time, you have been aware of the adoption of the financial technology and fintech across the globe, especially in the developed world, in the financial market. So Islamic finance has got attention from many people because people have realized that Islamic finance tries to deal in a way which is more responsible than the conventional finance, which endures more sustainability than the conventional finance, and which has a more accountable role for the society that might be absent in the conventional finance. So a good coordination among all the stakeholders is essential to reap the benefit of the Islamic finance and to spread the benefits of Islamic finance among the people from different countries. So that will also help us to attain sustainable growth. So we will try to achieve a growth which will not affect negatively to our future generation, which will create a positive impact for our future generation. So there is a kind of growth perspective which is more sustainable, and Islamic finance has a major role to play to achieve that kind of sustainable growth. So growth is not only attainable objective for us, we have to look for opportunities and we have to look for scopes available by utilizing the Islamic finance. So that is the graph I tried to refer in our previous slides. Okay. So you see that there are pictures. There's a picture which is reflecting the enormous growth of total Islamic finance industry for last 5 years, and 1 year is estimated here, I mean 2019. So this report, I mean the actual number for 2019-20 is now available with us, but we have this graph from S&P global ratings report, so which showed the trend of the Islamic finance across the years. And you see there has been a linear growth, positive growth of Islamic finance from the 2014 to 2018, and based on the estimate 2019 Islamic finance industries was expected to be 2.4 trillion. And we already have mentioned that it is expected to stagnate to a single-digit growth rate in the year of 2020-2021. So you see in 2014, the industry of Islamic finance was approximately 1,600 or you can say $1.6 trillion or 1.6 to $1.7 trillion. So by this 5 years or more than 5 years, so we have reached to an industry which is now more than 2.4 trillion USD. So this is the overall picture or overall trend of the Islamic finance industry. But now if I try to concentrate on the breakdown of the Islamic finance, we mentioned breakdown previously. So breakdowns are for Islamic banking assets, then Islamic shukuk. I mean, the shukuk is Islamic bond, and then takaful insurance, then shared by Islamic funds. You know that there are Islamic exchange traded fund, then Islamic mutual fund. So these funds assets have been included in this estimate, the blue shade. So you see which shade has increased more relative to 4 shades.
So banking assets?
Banking assets. So Islamic banking assets has been growing robust relative to other segments. And following the Islamic banking assets, which one is leading, shukuk or takaful?
Shukuk, sir.
Shukuk, okay. And I do not see very significant changes in the funds, but I see that growth, but that is kind of apparent and that is not very precise. But I see though fund has Islamic funds have also grown, but I see that Takaful also has grown, but not to that extent like Shukuk and the Islamic banking assets. Have you observed these issues, what I just have shared with you from the graph?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Does
sir.
it,
Maybe, sir, people are reluctant to the insurance sector, sir, I think.
okay, people are reluctant to insurance, particularly in our country. But in developed countries, there is no opportunity to choose whether I will take insurance or not. You will have an obligation to take the insurance for your asset. Okay, so there is no choice. So when there is a choice, we like to pick, or we like to, we do not like to pick. We have this kind of option. Okay, whatever. So I hope you have convinced that globally Islamic industry, Islamic finance industry is taking a momentum growth. Okay. Now, what I like to share now, we like to draw your attention to the Bangladesh Islamic finance industry. I mean, what is happening to the Islamic finance industry in Bangladesh in particular. So this report these figures have been taken from the Islamic Finance News, that is the Malaysia-based news provider, and that is the leading news provider for Islamic finance industry. So this report was made available in the later quarter of 2020. So they mentioned that Islamic industry is dominated by Islamic banks in Bangladesh. I mean, the Islamic finance is significantly dominated by Islamic banks in Bangladesh, and it has gained a stronger position in the banking industry of Bangladesh. And out of the total number of banks activities, I mean, out of the total activities, total banking activities, I mean, the general activities we try to mention in a very bold frame, which are deposit taking, then the loan and investment, then the remittance transfer or remittance channeling. So out of these general activities, it has been reported that one-fourth of the banking industry share has been taken by the Islamic banks. So in terms of number, Islamic banks in Bangladesh right now holding more than 25% of total bank deposits and providing close to 25%, I mean 24.93% of investment in total bank industry. And Islamic banks are also handling 27.2% of the total remittances. So in terms of performance index published or measured by Islamic Finance Country Index, Bangladesh also has improved from 2019 to 2020. The position of Bangladesh was 10th in 2019, but in 2020, it graduated from 10th to 8th position in terms of Islamic Finance Country Index. So a number of reasons have been mentioned for this exemplary growth of Islamic banks in Bangladesh. So major contributing reasons are Islamic banks are nowadays using latest technology to provide their services and adopting the fourth industrial revolutionary changes. And also, like other banks, Islamic banks in Bangladesh are also expanding their banking windows by setting up agent banking network. And another fact which is to be noted, that Islamic Bank Bangladesh Limited, which is the largest Islamic bank in our country, it recorded 1 trillion Bangladeshi taka deposits. In terms of USD, it is 11.54 billion in 2020 during the time of COVID-19 pandemic, and it has set up a milestone for the first time in Bangladesh in its banking industry. So I already have mentioned the Islamic bank's share in our total banking industry. But in terms of number of customers, what is our position? I mean, what is the Bangladesh position? In terms of Islamic banking customers across the world, it has been reported that 35% of Islamic banking customers live in Bangladesh. So this is huge, 35%. And in microcredit space, Bangladesh shares 50% share. And in MSME industry and MSME sector, which is micro, small, medium enterprise sector, Islamic banking of Bangladesh has share of 28%. So you can immediately recognize that Bangladesh is playing a major role. I mean, the Islamic finance of Bangladesh is playing a major role not within a country, but also in the global Islamic finance market. So I believe that you have got the numbers and you have got why Islamic finance and banking, this industry and Islamic finance industry in particular, more specific, is nowadays heavily discussed in financial market, because it is taking a major chunk of the industry activities, I mean the financial industry activities. So before jumping to the Islamic finance principles, because in our today's class, we will try to spend more time to understand the Islamic finance principles, or the principles on which Islamic finance is standing on. We will try to understand that how Islamic finance is different from the conventional banking. So we'll try to draw some pictures, draw some drawing, but as it is now 8:20, let's take a 10 minutes break and we'll resume our session at 8:30.
Sir, should we leave the meeting or we should
Sorry?
keep going? Should we leave the meeting?
You should not leave the meeting. You just pause the meeting and we'll resume our session at 8:30.
Okay, sir, no problem. Thank you.
Don't leave the meeting. So I hope we have been made convinced by these facts and figures of the Islamic banks in the globe, and also in the global industry. I mean the global financial industry, and also in the Bangladesh financial industry. So what we like to see right now, that how Islamic finance is distinctive from the conventional finance. So in terms of principles, the basis on which the Islamic finance and conventional finance are different are not very many, but very few. So very basic difference, which starts from the restriction of riba or usuri or the interest, which is very common in the conventional finance, and which is absent in the Islamic finance. Restriction on riba and or the interest income or usuri, whatever you like to refer. Okay. Then the second one is uncertainty and the grahor, which is the Islamic term. Some terminologies are, as these are uncommon terminology for us, we will become familiar over time. So that's why pronunciation might not be correct sometimes. So we'll try to correct ourselves. So grahar or uncertainty, and Islamic finance does not permit any contract where there is a significant amount of uncertainties. Islamic finance encourage people to take risk and to count risk and to take risk with proper estimation and proper information and knowledge. And Islamic finance does not allow people to make contract where a significant portion is uncertain, or there's a fault reasoning which cannot be justified, these things. Okay. So first one is riba, second one is grahar or uncertainty. Then third one is Islamic finance is okay. In terms of uncertainty, there is no restriction on conventional finance. Gambling is allowable. Speculation with much uncertainty is also allowable in conventional finance, but Islamic finance is differing on this note. And in terms of third point, Islamic finance encourage the PLS method of financing. PLS is here profit loss sharing method of financing. Unlike conventional finance, where conventional finance distribute risk asymmetrically, and conventional finance does not make you compelled to take only the profit loss sharing contract. In addition, conventional finance is allowing you only to take the interest income irrespective of the status or the condition of the borrower. So that is not permitted in Islamic finance. And number four is if we try to practice Islamic finance, we have to make a Sharia screening to filter out the haram companies or haram products or Sharia incompliant companies. And we are not allowed to make investment or make any financing to those companies or make business with those products, unlike conventional finance, which does not have any kind of screening for halal and haram. And in conventional finance, we are allowed to make investment to any product, any company, regardless of the permissibility of that product or that business in Islam. And we also are not restricted in conventional finance system to invest in some products which might be harmful, which might be dangerous for the country and also for the human well-being. Conventional finance does not discourage people from investing or to invest in those products. Okay, so before discussing more detail on those issues, let me draw some number. Let me show you that how Islamic finance is distinctive by writing, by showing you that how what is encouraged by Islamic finance and what is restricted in Islamic finance. Okay, where is my blank screen? Okay. So when we say that there is an interest income, so immediately in our mind, one thing pops up in our mind, that is the asset. That asset is very connected with the interest income. So if I write asset here, it will be better to write in black pen. Okay. So if I write asset, okay. So broadly speaking, asset can be classified under 3 headings or under 3 groups. So we will mention the third group later. But before that, let me classify asset into 2 broad groups. So one group of assets we can classify under real assets, and another group of assets we can classify or we can include under the classification of monetary assets. So if we like to understand what do we mean by asset, asset is something which gives us some intrinsic value, which gives us utility, and which gives us some benefits. So try to mention those things as asset. So which assets we try to mean as real asset? Examples from you.
Sir, land, sir,
Land, office equipment.
furniture, sir, buildings. These are the real assets.
Okay, land, buildings, these are the real assets because these assets provides direct benefit to us. If I stand on land or if I use my land for cultivation or for farming or for harvesting, the land is giving me the utility directly. There is no indirect connection. And same thing applies for buildings. So we have understood the real assets, which has some intrinsic value within itself, and it gives enormous benefit to the asset holder. Say, for example, you have been using a land for last 10 years. So still a good amount of benefit is remaining on that asset to be utilized by you. So that is a kind of essence of real asset. In contrary, if we look at monetary asset, so which assets we can include in terms of monetary assets? Any idea?
Sir, bill of exchange, promissory notes, bond.
Fixed deposit.
Okay, you are probably taking some financial assets in monetary assets. Okay, whatever. Let me give you some plain examples. Okay, let me give you some plain examples. Say, for example, you have USD or you have GBP. Okay, you want to make investment in this monetary assets, very legal tender government currencies. Okay, and some monetary assets common nowadays was also common during the prophet time in 570 year. So those are, and those are also gold, silver. So you see, these are the monetary assets. So you see, we will look return back to monetary assets later, but before going to further classification, let's make one thing clear here: monetary assets. What we mentioned to understand the real assets, which gives me direct benefit, which has some intrinsic value, right? Have we mentioned it in understanding real assets? Real assets has some intrinsic value. That's why you mentioned that these assets are real assets. But if we look at the monetary assets, say for example, you have a USD note of $100. Okay, so this is available with you. Does it have a intrinsic value?
No, sir.
It itself does not have any intrinsic value. Its value is equal to the amount of goods it can buy. Its value equals to
exchange value.
Equals to the amount of goods it can afford or it can buy, but it has no intrinsic value itself. It is a kind of paper note or a currency. It has become valuable because government has declared that I will pay 100 equivalent if you give me this note in return. So this is a kind of legal tender. That's why this paper has become a money. This paper has become a currency. This paper has become valuable for us. But whenever government withdraws its legal tender announcement, immediately it becomes a blank paper. It becomes a worthless paper. You probably can recall that Indian government withdrawn its 2000 denominated currency. Can you recall?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so immediately after that announcement, what happened to the 2000 rupees note? It became a paper after that announcement.
Yes, sir.
So that is how monetary assets are different from the real assets. So we will return back to it later, and we have understood how these are different. Okay, now, so these real assets can again be classified. Don't forget why we are discussing this. We are discussing this to understand how Islamic finance has been defined and how Islamic finance is different from the conventional finance. That's we are trying to increase, or we are trying to make discussion on this asset classification. Okay. So some real assets are non-consumables. And some, okay, some assets are consumables. So how we are defining consumables and non-consumables real estate? Say for example, right now, your laptop or your smartphone is in front of you. You are behind a
Yes,
screen.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That is a real asset or monetary asset?
Sir, real asset.
That is a kind of real asset. So that is a kind of non-consumable asset.
Yes, sir.
Why it is non-consumable asset? Because it has a certain time period and certain life. You are using it, but it will not immediately vanish when you are using it. It will take time. So to that extent of time, you will be enjoying using that asset. So that other examples like this smartphone as non-consumable asset. Other examples are air conditioner, your laptop, then your books, then these things you can immediately take so many examples. Okay. At the same time, some other non-consumable assets, say for example, fossil fuel in the Middle East country and in also in our country. Say for example, we have the natural gas reserve. So that reserve is a kind of non-consumable asset. So this is kind of non-consumable because it will take time to utilize that reserve. But the amount of gas we are right now using in our kitchen, that is kind of, we are consuming that natural gas. And at the same time, other consumables are, say for example, we have a water reserve. We have a water reserve for, say for example, 5 years, for example. That may be non-consumable, but the amount of water, what I'm just right now consuming, in that case, water, the glass of water will become a consumable asset. And also the rice or the regular lunch or dinner, the foods which we are consuming, these are consumable. These are assets, but we are consuming, and these are here. So we can write some example, rice, we can use, say for example, other write some very plain example. Okay. And also we can write some milk. Okay. So Islamic finance is saying that when you are giving these things, let me take a different color. Okay. When you are exchanging these assets with someone, you cannot mention in the agreement that when the borrower will be returning that asset to you, borrower will have to pay this amount of extra. Say, for example, you have given 2 kilos of rice. Then you are saying that when you will return this rice to me later, you will give me 2.5 kilo of rice. You cannot say these things for these two categories. This is the restriction in the Islamic finance. And if you do this, that you are saying this, that, okay, you have taken 100 USD from me. So when you will be returning this 100 USD to me, I will not accept 100 USD from you unless you pay $5 extra. So when you have mentioned it, you have mentioned it before giving the $100 to him or her. So when you are mentioning this, you are saying you are claiming interest from him. So Islamic finance is saying that money cannot purchase money. By money, you cannot purchase money. By giving 100, you cannot purchase 105. So that is how these two type of assets are distinctive from these two type of assets. We'll mention about this. So does not Islamic finance use this? Obviously, Islamic finance use this, but in which way? We'll mention about it later. Let's return back to the real assets. So what can you do with the real assets and consumable, non-consumables? Say, for example, you have given you have a land. You have a land, a piece of land. So you have given this land to a person for using it for 5 years. So you have mentioned to that person who is taking your land that you will be paying $10,000 for each year you will be using my land. This is how you can utilize your real assets for generating income. And you can immediately relate it with the capital lease. You can immediately relate it with the lease agreement or ijara. At the same time, you can, at the same way, you can use your building to rent it out and to generate income. So there is no objection with this. So what we are doing here, we are doing a lease financing here. So if you're a landowner, what can you do? You can lease your land out to that person who is in need of that land for cultivation, for farming, whatever the purpose. Then, if you need a house, what can you do? An Islamic bank can purchase a house for you under his ownership. The 100% ownership is to be taken by the Islamic bank. Then Islamic bank is saying you that I am giving you the right to utilize this house, and what you will be doing, you will be paying monthly this amount to me, And after a certain period, when you will be finishing this amount of payment, you can buy it, you can buy this house from me. So you know that in case of lease financing, there is a option to purchase, in which case capital lease. In operating lease, this option is not given. In capital lease, it is given. So in this way, a bank can, Islamic bank can purchase the real estate and make money out of it by leasing it out or by renting it out. At the same time, you can do for non-consumables. So what can you do? Say, for example, you need a smartphone, but you do not have the money. You do not have the money. So the shopkeeper is giving you the option for credit purchase. So he's saying that, okay, this smartphone is worth of 50,000 taka. So pay 20,000 now and pay the remaining 30,000 in next 1 year. But if you purchase the smartphone right now on cash, you can purchase this same smartphone from me at 45,000 taka. You see, the smartphone seller is generating. My slide has gone. Okay. The smartphone owner is generating 5,000 additional income. By which mean? By making a credit sale. So Islamic finance has given this facility to the smartphone seller. So what we wrote here, non-consumables, and we wrote here real assets. One classification is non-consumables, another classification is consumables, and here monetary assets, and these two are the classification of assets. So have you got it? How can a person generate income by using his real assets and non-consumables? There is no problem. You can do the same thing in conventional finance with the real assets and the non-consumables. There is no problem with this. But problem is here you have a restriction. Okay, this. So you see that I have used the red balloon here. Let me use the green balloon asset here. So these are green balloon asset, and these are I should mention these are red balloon asset. Okay, now what can you do in terms of monetary asset? I have mentioned that on a predetermined basis, you cannot say that you need or the borrower has to pay this amount extra to you regardless of the borrower's condition. So how can you utilize your monetary assets to generate income? So you can mention to the borrower that I'm giving you 1,000 taka and I know that you need this money for doing a startup, and if that startup has made say 1,500 taka, 1,500, I mean from 1,000 to 1,500. Okay. Investor does not know earlier that how much it will be 1,000 from 1,000 to 1,500 or more than this. But investor is saying that give me 20% share out of that 500. At the same time, if your startup fails, if your startup valuation becomes worth of only 200 from the 1,000, I will also want to share 50%. You will share 50%, I will share 50% loss. So the investor is taking the profit share, investor is also taking the loss share. So in this way, monetary assets can be utilized by the asset holder to generate the income. Anyone wants to participate? I see some noise. I listen some noise from. Okay, fine. You have muted yourself. Okay, consumables. So can you recall what kind of financing I mentioned under beside real estate? Which financing I mentioned?
Lease financing.
Lease financing. Okay, fine. So let me write it down for you. Lease financing, house financing can happen here and here. It can be kind of
So credit facility.
credit sale. Okay. You can also make money out of the monetary assets, but without any prior agreement, fixed percentage you cannot say, regardless of your condition, you have to be responsible to pay this amount to me. You cannot say like this, or the investor cannot say like this. Then consumables. Say, for example, I'm a businessman and I do business of rice. So say I need money, or I cannot afford. I need say 50 kgs. No, not 50 kgs. 50 tons of rice. 50 tons of rice. I'm a trader. So what can I do? I can appeal to the Islamic bank or Islamic financier that I'm a rice trader. I will be requiring 50 tons of rice. I will have money available after selling this 50 tons of rice. What will you do? What can you do for me? So Islamic banks will purchase 50 tons of rice for you from the supplier of rice and pay the amount to the rice seller. Not this rice seller. Remember, I'm not mentioning this one, rice supplier. And say, for example, Islamic banks has paid $100 to that rice supplier. And Islamic bank is now saying that I'm purchasing this $100 worth of rice for you. And when you will be selling this rice, you will pay 110 to me. You see, this is a kind of not, this is not a kind, you see that who bought the rice trader or the Islamic bank?
Islamic.
Islamic bank.
Islamic bank has to buy the rice by himself, by itself. Okay, under its ownership. but who is taking care of the rice? Rice seller, rice trader. And when the rice seller will sell off his total rice, and he will be paying 110. It can be related to this credit sale. So this is kind of trade financing. This is kind of trade financing. So you can relate it with the how the working capital is financed in the conventional finance. So in
Sir.
working, okay, I'm taking your point. Okay, working capital finance. In case of working
Sir, I have a
capital
question.
finance, bank gives money directly to the rice seller. Bank does not involve in any transaction with the rice supplier. But in case of rice, in case of Islamic finance, Islamic bank itself is directly engaged himself with the rice supplier. So that is how conventional finance and Islamic finance is different in case of trade financing. Okay, please share. Someone was trying to say something.
Yes, sir. Sir, is this $110 in this example, is this amount a fixed amount or this is just a percentage of profit?
This amount of profit can be prefixed earlier. Okay. This will be mentioned in the agreement. This will be mentioned in the agreement. Okay.
Okay, sir. And
But it is also mentioned in the agreement if for
the
some reason,
consumable goods, for the consumable
yeah, in case of consumable goods. But if for some reason it turns out that that this amount of rice could not be sold at this $100, what would happen then?
Sir.
What would happen then?
Sir.
In that case, Islamic
That
bank
was my
has
next
to,
question. I wanted to ask that.
yeah, Islamic bank has to take a share of loss, and that will also be predetermined, that how much loss I will be taking. Okay, have you got it? So this is the
Yes, sir.
essence.
Thank you, sir.
This is an essence of profit loss sharing method of financing, PLS method of financing. Okay.
Sir, if I need to buy some consumable asset for consumption purpose, not for business purpose, in that case,
Right.
can I take sir, the help of Islamic bank?
Yes, you can take help from Islamic banks, but you must mention in your agreement that if for some reason you fail to make payment because you couldn't afford the consumption properly later, for whatever the reason, if there is uncertainty, in that case, what will be his or her standing? Say, for example, you have purchased consumable asset for consumption, but for some reason, if you fail to meet up that payment, what will happen? Will you be liable to pay the dues fully, or Islamic banks will share a portion of loss with you? Usually it does not happen.
Yes, sir. What is the common?
Usually it does not happen. I mean, in consumption practice, it does not actually happen. But what Islamic banks can do, Islamic banks can increase your length of repayment. Islamic banks will increase the length of your repayment period, so that you will come back and you will make payment.
স্যার একটা কোশ্চেন ছিল স্যার।
Yes, please.
স্যার পেমেন্টটা কি স্যার আমি বিক্রি মানে প্রোডাক্টটা সেল করার পরে করব নাকি স্যার এটা একটা পিরিয়ডিক্যাল পেমেন্ট হবে স্যার?
Which one? In which case?
স্যার নন কনজিউমেবল গুডস এর ক্ষেত্রে যদি বলি স্যার, তাহলে স্যার ওই যে প্রোডাক্টটা আমাকে কিনে দিচ্ছে, স্যার প্রোডাক্ট কিনে তারপরে বলছে যে এটা থেকে প্রফিট হলে সেটা আপনি শেয়ার করবেন, প্রফিটটা আমার সাথে শেয়ার করবেন, ব্যাংক যেটা বলছে আর কি। তো আমি যদি স্যার বিক্রি করতে তো সময় লাগে, তো সেই
হুম।
সময়টা কি স্যার আমার তো পেমেন্ট বিক্রি করে পেমেন্ট করবো নাকি একটা পিরিয়ডিক্যাল পেমেন্ট করেই যেতে হবে স্যার?
If you can afford, if it is like that, it is not like that you will be able to sell the 50 tons of rice by 1 month. It may take time. So there will be some periodical payment. The payment conditions might differ. Payment conditions might vary. You might require periodical payment or usually periodical payment. Usually it is periodical payment. Okay, with the expectation that you are selling the goods periodically. You are selling a certain amount of goods in each period of time. Okay, so we'll be knowing more about these things. These are just kind of very primary introduction of Islamic finance. Okay, so let me,
আমার স্যার একটু একটা কোশ্চেন ছিল স্যার।
yes,
স্যার
please.
স্যার আপনি কি স্যার আবাবিল সম্পর্কে স্যার জানেন? আবাবিল যে এখন যেই স্যার আমি স্যার আবাবিল স্যার ডিরেক্ট স্যার সফটওয়্যার ইঞ্জিনিয়ার হিসেবে কিছুদিন স্যার কাজ করছি। এখন স্যার আমি স্যার ইন্ডিয়ান ব্যাংকের আন্ডারে যখন ছিলাম তখন আর কি স্যার এটাতে কাজ করছি। তো স্যার সেখানে স্যার যেটা দেখছি যে যখন কোনো লোন স্যার রিশিডিউল করা হয়, আমি যদি টেনরটা যখন আমি টেনে বাড়ায় দিচ্ছি তখন কিন্তু আমার আলটিমেটলি প্রফিটটা কিন্তু আস্তে আস্তে বেড়ে যাচ্ছে, মানে রেট অফ ইন্টারেস্টটাও আর কি ইয়ে করে আমার ধরেন আমার 100 টাকা দিয়ে আমার প্রফিট নেওয়ার কথা, সেখানে কিন্তু আমি যদি টেনরটাকে বাড়ায় দেই সেক্ষেত্রে একদম আমার প্রফিটটাও বেড়ে যাচ্ছে। তো এই জিনিসটা কি ইসলামিক ফাইন্যান্সের সাথে যায়?
Okay, if you for the changes in the condition, I mean for the changes in the condition over time.
Sir.
So when you are doing this, you are making a new agreement. You are making a new agreement. So if that condition does not put the borrower in a deprived condition, in that case it is allowable. If it is such that lengthening the period for the purpose of taking more money from the borrower, but it will actually create more burden for the borrower, in that case it might become might not become justified.
না স্যার নরমালি স্যার মানে এখনকার সিনারিও গুলো যেরকম হয়, যেটা যারা রিশিডিউল করতে আসে তো তারা তো স্যার হচ্ছে আমার রিপেমেন্ট মিস করে গেছে, টাইম বিং সে যে এসএস হয়ে গেছে বা সে ক্লাসিফাইড লোনের মধ্যে বিভিন্ন স্টেজের সাথে চলে গেছে, এই জন্য সে স্যার হচ্ছে রিশিডিউল করাচ্ছে একটা লোনকে। তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে তো এটা তো বুঝাই যাচ্ছে যে সে পেমেন্টটা দিতে পারতেছে না। তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে তো এটা তাকে একটা বার্ডেনই তো দিয়ে দেওয়া হচ্ছে না।
At the same time, Islamic banks has some windows through which they provide facilities to the default borrowers or to the borrowers who are in real problem. If the borrowers are in real problem, Islamic banks has some facilities which provide some advantages to the default borrowers. So we'll know more about this later.
ওকে স্যার।
Okay.
স্যার আরেকটা কোশ্চেন স্যার করতে যাচ্ছিলাম স্যার।
So it will be better if we discuss the questions later of the class.
Okay, sir.
For the sake of time, it will be better to proceed with the remaining contents for this introductory session. Okay. Now,
Okay, sir.
the first question, that why Islam has prohibited riba or the interest or usury, whatever you like to mention. So the main source of the Islamic finance, I mean the main source of Islamic finance laws are from the Holy Quran, and it is accompanied, it is supplemented by the sayings of Prophet which we term as hadith, and you are very familiar with what are mentioned in the Holy Quran regarding the riba, that trade has been allowed and interest has been forbidden by the God, and there will be no benefit if anyone is involved in the interest income, and at the same time, if anyone is involved in the activities of charity, his contribution and his benefits will be multiplied. There will be multiplier effect. So there are a number of verses in the Holy Quran and also hadith during the permissibility and also the rationality, permissibility of business and also the rationality of forbidding the interest income. So we'll try to discuss more about it here. So first of all, I'd like to discuss from the factors of production. So you know very well from the very basic economics concept that labor gets compensation for employing their effort. Labor gets compensation by means of wages and salaries. And when capital asset, here, though we have mentioned capital, actually we are meaning here the capital asset. So kind of you have a land, you have a building, so you are leasing this asset out and you are taking a rental income or you are taking a rental. So these are kind of why you are taking this rental. These are kind of compensation for taking the risk associated with utilization of asset. So this compensate the profit compensates the risk associated with the capital asset utilization. And at the same time, you are in the same way you are using land building and you are taking rental income from that. And other than this asset, if you say you have a working capital, say for example, you have current asset, you can also take working capital asset. So you have mentioned about the rice for the rice trader. So he is sharing profit with the people or with the institution which provides financing to him. So he provided, the Islamic bank provided capital to the rice trader by purchasing rice for the rice trader, and Islamic bank is getting some profit sharing. It is for the risk taking. The compensation is for taking the risk associated with it. But when we are giving some money to someone, that money itself does not involve with giving some effort. So it is not when we are giving money to someone, it is not kind of very comparable with this kind of factors, because this cannot be directly used. So money cannot be directly used in the production. So what we need to do, we need to convert money. We need to simply convert money into real estate, non-consumable assets for making the production possible. So money is a kind of what we are doing for storing value, for exchanging goods and services, and also for exchanging our time value. For these purposes, we are using money. But money cannot be directly used in the production. But when we are taking money out of money, as money is not giving any effort directly, money is not giving any benefit like the labor, capital, land, building, this kind of direct effort, direct contribution. So if we take money out of money, that is not a kind of counter value. So that kind of reward is coming without giving effort. So that cannot be direct, that cannot be related like this kind of factors of production. So this is a justification for prohibition of riba, or making money out of money, or purchasing money by money. And we'll try to see some other justification why the riba has been banned by religions. Okay. Now, before looking at the points, we like to give a caveat to you so that you can make yourself aware that who has banned riba. Many of us know very well that riba is banned in Islam, and we all have to know riba was banned also in other religions, including Jews, including Christian, including Hindu, including Buddhist. All religions have restricted the use of riba, or making money out of money. But over time, Islam is the only religion which has kept its promise intact, and people from other religions have disregarded, not all people, but many have disregarded that riba is restricted in their religions also. So it is not true. If you explore the resources, you will find that scholars have given evidence that riba was inadmissible. Riba has been inadmissible not only in Islam religion, but also in other religions. But over time, some religions ignored it, overlooked it, hide it, whatever it is. But nowadays, many people believe that Islam is the only religion which has restricted the use of riba, or making money out of money. Okay. Now, when the amount of interest is very excessive, it is comparable, or it is referred as usury. So it creates a burden for the borrower. Obviously, there is a reward for the lender. I'll mention about it also. There is a justification why riba should be allowed. But right now, we are just justifying the reasons why riba has been banned. Okay. So riba has been banned because it creates burden for the borrowers, and it creates money for the people who have the money, and it reduces money for those people who do not have the money adequate for themselves. So it is a common justification, or number one justification, that interest is always excess, interest is always excessive, and it creates additional burden on the people. You probably can recall that once upon a time, when there was no bank, when there was no financial institution, there was only the time for the lenders. It was 200%, 400% interest rate. So if I get 1 taka from you as a borrower, I will have to pay 5 taka to you, 4 taka extra. So from that point of time, when there was not much competition, not much information symmetry, nowadays it can come down to 10%, 15, 5%, these rates. So the very high percentage is termed as usury or excessive interest, and the small percentages are usually termed as riba and simply interest. So for this creation of burden, it does not redistribute the income. It creates a problem in redistribution of income. You know, for the problem in the redistribution of income, the difference between the wealth of rich and the wealth of poor has been gradually piling up or has been gradually rising. So you see, when you are charging or when we are charging interest on someone who has borrowed money from us, we are taking no risk. We are taking no risk. Whatever the risk is burden of you. You are Mr. A. So Islam does not encourage any person to stay in this condition. Islam is giving you, or Islam is encouraging you to take risk and to share the risk. So when you are sharing the risk with Mr. A, risk is becoming more symmetric. But instead of sharing the risk, when you are saying that regardless of your condition, you will be liable to pay this percent to me, what you are doing? You are making the risk distribution asymmetric. And making money from money is unjust because you have kept money. Many people have kept money, not making money out of money, but to achieve safety and to avoid the risk of losing money for any unprecedented incident. That's why people keep money from a riskier place to a safer place. So you actually are getting advantage for it. So on that sense, making again money out of money, because you are actually getting two benefits. One is you are avoiding the risk of stealing, risk of losing money for incident, and you are also preserving your money. So you do not need to, you should not charge money who is using or who is keeping your money and who is taking who has been ensuring the safety of your money. And then time element is insufficient to justify the rewards. So that is the popular concept of the conventional finance and the learning from the finance 101 course. That is the time value of money. Money value changes over time. $1 worth of $1 today is less valuable than the $1 worth of $1 yesterday. That's why you are liable to, or you give me more money when I'm giving you the money for use. Okay. Now the thing is that many of us have the question in our mind, does not Islam recognize the time value of money? Before getting the answer to that question, we have to understand how Islam looks at money, or what is the perspective of Islam regarding the money. So you probably have noticed that wastage of money has been strictly discouraged by the Islam. Are you aware of it? Wastage of money is discouraged.
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the same time, hoarding of money is also strongly discouraged. You will accumulate money. You will accumulate money after money. So what one is doing? Hoarding money. So when person is hoarding money, what is happening? The other person who is requiring that money, he does not get the advantage of using the money for the good purpose. Have you got it? When someone is hoarding money, how hoarding money is possible? Hoarding money is possible because I'm not in use of my money, that's why I'm hoarding, right? I do not have the productive use of the money which I am right now holding. That's why I'm hoarding money. Are you getting the points?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I'm doing this, what is happening to another person in my society who is in need of money? He is depriving of the use of that money. So it is for the socially responsible financing, money should be given to that person who is in need of that money. So you see, these two things have been strongly discouraged in the Islamic finance. So you see, in conventional finance, one reason other than the other looming reason, one reason why people hoard money is because people know if they hoard money, they will get the reward in terms of interest income. So what is happening? That person is not engaged with some risk sharing or profit loss sharing based activities. And what is happening? That person is becoming inactive. That person is becoming a very risk averse person, highly risk averse person. That person is not very likely to engage in very productive activities when I am skipping profit loss sharing, because I do not like to help a startup to grow. Rather, I like to use my money to keep it in an interest bearing agreement, and regardless of the performance of the investment, I will get a fixed percentage. So what kind of attitude we are growing among ourselves? We are taking risk or sharing risk, or we are taking a kind of side which is a kind of, we like to avoid any type of risk. So these two things are strongly discouraged, hoarding and the wastage of money. But you see, these two things have not been discouraged in the conventional finance. So obviously Islam recognizes time value of money. That's why Islam is giving you the opportunity, when you are the credit seller, you are a singer, Bangladesh, you are selling 50,000 taka refrigerator to a customer, and customer is saying, please understand, I do not have the 50,000 right now, I have only 10,000. You give me a 6-month facility, and you tell me how much you will charge. Now singer is saying that you have to pay 60,000. Now this 60,000 is now the selling price, no longer this 50,000. Now singer is getting 10,000 taka extra. singer is getting 10,000 taka extra from the same customer for giving the credit facility for 6 months, and it is fully allowed. So does Islam recognize time value of money, or Islam does not recognize time value of money? What do you think? Islam recognizes time value of money in terms of, you see, the credit sale, in terms of profit loss sharing method.
Sir.
Hmm.
Sir, in that case, purchasing something through credit card is also okay in Islamic finance, right?
I can't listen you properly. Your network is probably disturbing.
Sir,
Can I take your question after ending of the class? Keep your question with yourself. Yes. I'll be taking question once your network becomes stable. Okay. Now, why should we enjoy the interest income? We have learned that if we save money, we have the interest as a reward. And we are sacrificing our current consumption, and we are deferring our current consumption, and that's why we are getting interest income. These are very convincing argument for having the interest income. And we use the interest income as a compensation for the opportunity cost we have incurred by deferring our consumption for a time being. And also interest income is also regarded as compensation for bearing the risk associated with it. You are very familiar with the formation of interest income. The very basic is opportunity cost, then inflation, then the risk premium. This is how interest income is composed of, or interest rate is composed of. Very basic from the finance. You have learned about it. So you are getting the interest income for bearing some risk, and interest is giving you some compensation for risk. So these are some conventional argument for having the interest income. And we have discussed the counter argument, and we have the argument against the riba. Okay. Now in modern finance, we are familiar with these things: business and the personal lending, simple and compound interest, real and nominal interest, and micro or macroeconomic interest determination. We have mentioned some way how interest is determined. Another way is, you probably have learned from your macroeconomics, that is the money supply, and there is a money demand. Okay, there is a interest income. Is it like this? When interest income is slow, money demand is huge, bigger, larger, and the opposite is true. So that is how in macroeconomy interest income, sorry, this is not interest income, this is interest rate. Interest rate is determined. Okay. Now we have got one principle of Islamic finance, that is why riba has been restricted. And the second principle we like to highlight and we like to emphasize is when there is a huge amount of uncertainties in your contract, in your financing contract, you cannot take that. So that is gharar, or that is in terms of our term, that is uncertainty. So when there's a huge volume of uncertainty, that is forbidden in Islam. So let's think of gambling. Gambling. So when there is a gambling, a huge amount of uncertainty. So you know how risk is different from uncertainty. Risk is something which we can estimate based on the probabilities number. But uncertainty is something which we cannot evaluate, which we cannot calculate that what is going to happen. So risk is encouraged in Islam, uncertainty is not encouraged in Islam. So when you see that there is uncertainty, huge amount of uncertainty in this contractual agreement, we have to skip that kind of agreement. So there is a Quranic saying that when you are wanting to make an agreement, make sure that everything, every condition has been written in a very precise way, and that is very beneficial for you, and that is will be a guidance to solve any kind of conflict which may arise among you later of the contract period. And the third principle we like to share, which you already have mentioned indirectly, that is the PLS, profit loss sharing. So Islam does not encourage the asymmetry of risk. Rather, Islam encourages profit loss sharing. Make a partnership with the person who is taking money from you, and you can make several types of partnership agreement. Some examples are say mudaraba, and another one is musharaka. We'll know more about this later. So when you are making a mudaraba agreement, what you are doing, you are supplying your management and labor. You are an entrepreneur, and the financier or Islamic finance institution is providing the capital with you and participate in a investment together. And in case of musharaka, Islamic finance institution is not only the institution which provides financing, rather give some money by yourself also. Say you give 40%, I give 60%. So let's make investment together, and that will be kind of joint venture. This is a kind of very basic essence of musharaka. So this is an participatory finance. And another term which you mentioned earlier, that is Islamic finance has grown with momentum because it is creating an environment which is like responsible finance. So you know that Shukuk, Beximco has recently got the first company to issue the Shukuk bond. So what will Beximco do? Beximco will take the money by issuing the Shukuk to the buyers, and Beximco will utilize the money for financing its solar-based power plant, and also to solar-based 2 power plants, and also another is to expand their textile business. So you see, the people who will be buying the Beximco Shukuk, they will have the claim on the textile, Beximco textile asset, and also the solar power projects held by the Beximco. They will have the claim on that. So you see, by backing up those assets, Beximco is taking financing. So there is a kind of encouraging the real economic activity, Say, at the same time, in conventional finance, if you do, say for example, you have raised 1,000 crore taka, but it has been later discovered that 200 crore taka has been used for luxury treatment or for luxury pleasure trip of the directors. it has been later discovered. So this is very likely to happen in conventional finance, but in case of Islamic finance, you have to make sure, you have to show that which assets you are financing, and your instruments are backed by which assets specifically, what are their valuations. But in case of conventional finance, you are not very much liable to declare each and everything what you will be doing by taking the money from the investors. And by using the Islamic finance, what you are doing, you are financing tangible and also the intangible assets. And at the same time, you see, you are following the religious guidance in case of Islamic finance, and you are doing an ethical business behavior. For example, liquor business, liquor business is not permissible in Islam. But in conventional finance, you can issue IPO and use the proceeds to finance a liquor business company. And also the adult industry, you can make financing by conventional finance, but at the same time, you cannot make financing the adult industry company by taking money in Islamic finance. At the same time, what you are doing in terms of moral economic activities, you are differentiating halal and haram. So for example, we have mentioned about the liquor. So though you are ensuring ethical business by discouraging some unethical business activity, you see that Islam has strongly discouraged the gambling. So gambling is not a very good thing for the real economy. So it has not been discouraged by the conventional finance. It has conventional finance has allowed us to engage in gambling. But you see, we are not allowed to engage in gambling under the Islamic finance. So that is creating an ethical behavior among us. And we are differentiating halal and haram activities in the Islamic finance, which we are not doing in case of conventional finance. Say, for example, media industry, media or entertainment. Entertainment, would you please mute your microphone? Would you please mute your microphone? Okay. So in Islamic finance, we might not get opportunity to finance the entertainment media business, but in conventional finance, there is no restriction on that. And Islamic finance is more transparent because by virtue of Sharia law, you need to be more transparent. Otherwise, you cannot claim that I am a Sharia compliant Islamic financial institution. I cannot claim that. That's why Islamic finance, by very of its nature, is more transparent than the conventional finance institutions. So Islamic finance encourages us to engage more in productive activity and discourage the unproductive activity. You see, real economic activity, which are more production based, but at the same time, there are some activities which are not much productive, but Islamic finance encourages more on the productive activities. So through Islamic finance, we like to make sure that borrowers and lenders are not in a different world, they are in the same world. And as long as we can enhance the sharing and caring between these two groups, what can we do? We can achieve a more equitable society and ensure more equity in our society. So on that note, we like to end our class session here.